My name is Rachel Slawson, and I was the first openly queer contestant to win a title at Miss USA, and this is that story. This was my 7th pageant and my 5th time competing at Miss Utah USA. Winning this pageant represents years of training, but it also represents years of therapy to be in a good headspace, to be a good title holder. My parents got divorced when I was 15. After my parents' divorce, I started struggling with really bad self-esteem. I think I internalized a lot of things that they had said about each other throughout that process as characteristics about myself. When I first started competing, I was 18 years old. When I first saw Miss Utah USA Marissa Powell, I just saw how radiant and confident she was. That's what initially led me to want to try pageantry. One of the biggest struggles that I faced in terms of pageantry is comparison. When you see a girl get crowned, if she's smaller than you, you think that you need to be smaller. If she's bigger than you in some areas, you think that you need to be bigger. I've tried to end my life twice, and the last time I tried to end my life was when I was 19 years old, and it was the night I lost Miss Utah USA. I competed in 4 other pageants since that night, and every time you don't win, it can feel so hopeless. After I tried to end my life, I realized that I was going to have to start really reaching out for help, and that starts with opening up and sharing my experience with what I was going through. People had diagnosed me with bipolar disorder before, and I always just was like, no, I don't have that, because that sounded really scary. But when I realized that it was nothing to be afraid of, and if I really took ownership of that, it's totally possible to have a healthy and somewhat normal life, even though I think normal is a little overrated. I started to realize that winning's not necessarily the goal because you can't always control that, but what I can control is how I show up for myself, and that's showing up as a winner every single day, at least to the best of my ability. People have asked what the one thing I did differently to win this year was, and halfway through the pageant, I just had this moment where I realized that this was going to be my last state pageant because I feel like I had learned what I came there to learn, and that was how to love myself, and that it wasn't really about whether I was picked or not. And I think in years past, I just assumed that the fact that I didn't get it meant there was something wrong that I needed to change. I realized that there was nothing I had to change about who I am. Whether I left with a crown or not, I was going to leave with a sense of self, and that was the biggest prize of all. But I do remember that the morning of finals, I woke up and I was talking to my coach, and she said, Rachel, this is just as much yours as anyone else's. You have to go out there and show them that it's you. I just decided that this is going to be my year, and I was going to show them that it was my time, and it worked. We have a tradition in pageantry. The night before your fitness competition, they usually have pizza. It doesn't make any sense why you would have pizza when you've been training forever, but I think, in terms of mental health, it was actually really good for me to realize that pizza's not going to change your body overnight. But this year it was canceled. They didn't do it, so I decided that I was going to do it anyways. And I invited girls back to my hotel room and had a pizza party. Normally, after a pageant's over, you're so hungry because you've been, training for so long, but I was pretty good. The night of the pageant, I was shaking so badly that people could see from the audience. I was so nervous, I maybe peed my pants a little bit when I walked out in evening gown. Once you're backstage, you have a lot of support from everyone, but they're focused on so many girls. There's no one back there whose job is to be with you. That was when I realized that I was going to have to really just show up for myself as my own best friend and really trust and listen to my own voice. So between prelims and finals, somebody offered me a Xanax and said that that was the only way I was going to win, that I was shaking so badly, and that you can't be crowned Miss Utah USA if you're shaking and you look insecure. For a moment, I was really worried and thought maybe that is the only way I'm going to win, but I really thought about it, and I've worked so hard to balance my brain chemistry that it wasn't worth sacrificing that for one night. I chose not to take it, and instead I went into a hallway to meditate. I really wanted a moment to just be alone with myself and to calm myself down, and I've learned that struggling with bipolar disorder, it requires a lot of self-regulation with my emotions. I've found that meditation and alone time can really help with that. So we're asked to give a personal statement. In my personal statement, that was when I shared with the entire audience both my personal experience being homeless, my personal experience with my mental health and being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and also coming out as the first queer woman to ever openly compete at Miss USA. I kind of went back and forth on whether I wanted to come out in the first place, because one of my fears of coming out was that I would be known as that bisexual girl, and I always joke that I get enough of that with being that bipolar girl, so it's like, how many bis can you be? Especially being from Utah, I carried a lot of shame around my sexuality, and I realized that if I can be open about this, maybe it will make it a little bit easier for somebody else. It's really hard to know what other people think. You can't read their minds, and especially being on stage, I'm sure that there was a wide range of reactions, but most importantly, I knew how I felt, and that was, I felt at peace with myself. It didn't really matter what anybody else thought in that moment, and I think that that was what really differentiated this pageant from other pageants, because I really felt like I showed up as the best version of myself. The emotion in the room was strong. I'll never know what other people thought, but I do know what happens next. I was crowned. When they call your name and you've been told no for 7 pageants, there was actually a moment where I turned around and asked, wait, really? Like, this is actually happening? The feedback has been really positive. I think that this is a huge landmark for the pageant community, and it's always exciting when you see people that are taking new steps forward in an industry. You know, occasionally you read the comments on a news article and it's not always the most positive, but I also understand that that has nothing to do with me, and that's more a reflection of where society is at with homophobia. I focus on the positive because I know how much this win means to other people other than myself. Now I'm using this platform to share my message, which is #IamWhy, and that means that I am my own why. The only reason that I need to be here is the fact that I am, and the only reason that you need to be here is the fact that you're here. And I really hope that that encourages people to be their own mental health advocate and share their story and start breaking down stigma, starting with you. It's a huge breath of fresh air to just let yourself be you and follow your heart. And just being able to walk out into the world exactly as I am and not having to hide anything feels really good. You can be queer and win! Yay!